I had this camera propped up here and I recorded a take of this, and then I took the camera out to watch it, and then it took me 10 minutes to prop the camera back up here again. That gives you an idea of the kind of studio I'm in. You haven't seen me for 3 weeks. I mean, unless you know me. But as far as the talk show goes, you have not seen me. And I lay that squarely at the feet of the producer because I tried to get guests and I couldn't. And, it happens. I don't know if you know this, but people aren't clamoring to be on this show. It's not the highest profile talk show on the internet. I gotta hustle to get guests. And I couldn't. So, all right, fine. Live without. You're not gonna get a show that week. And live with the uncertainty. That's something I'm learning to do. I'm learning to live with uncertainty. I'll tell you all about that when I can tell you about it because I was out of town for commercial work. I actually got a job on a commercial, except I'm not in the commercial. And I can't really talk about it. I mean, maybe I can. I asked the supervising producer, can I tell everyone I'm in Mexico City? Oops, I guess I shouldn't have said that part. And she says, probably. That's not a yes. I could get in big trouble. So I'm not going to say that part. I don't, I can't tell you. My point is, the story is just as interesting, 2 weeks from now or whatever, when I can tell you. So right now, I'm just not going to. Sorry. There's a reason I don't make teasers for a living. I had a really great chat with Kari Wahlgren. I've known her a long time, and she's a very successful voiceover actor. She's got a zillion credits. I've looked it up on IMDb, and it actually says a zillion. She she was very forthcoming about the ins and outs of the business, and that's what I wanted to know. Like, how do you figure out the voice for a character that no one's voiced before? How do you do that? And especially when you have so little copy to work with sometimes. And she actually has to audition. I was surprised to learn that. I thought when you reached the zillion threshold, that just jobs just kind of landed in your lap. No, she and these other like high level pros who've been doing this forever, they still have to audition. So it's a reminder of something that I have suspected, but still need some convincing that everybody in show business is human. And yeah, she says it's humbling. So, I don't like the fact that people are humbled, but it's nice to know that they're not that far removed from the rest of us. They're people and they're figuring it out too. She's also a singer. She started a band. She didn't know how to start a band. She just got inspired and she talks about that. And she started a band and she's crushing it with this band. She just released a single. It is a cover of a song by a hair band from 30 years ago called SlaughtHER. The song is called Mad About You. It is a fantastic version of that song. There's a video to match. That's all in the show notes. And she breaks the news in our interview about an album, about what's coming after the single. So stick around, watch the interview. You'll hear that news. But it's another example of a person who just kind of went for it. Just went, just didn't. She didn't know the script. She didn't know the dance steps. She said, "Look, I love voice acting. I love making voices. She's been watching cartoons since she was a kid. I want to do this." And she came out here and fits and starts and stumbled this and had the survival jobs and all that, and she made it. And I think it's inspiring. And it was great chatting with her again. So I hope you like this chat. I did. It's educational. It's inspiring, and it's getting very hot in my little closet here. I don't mean metaphorically. I mean,
Okay. I'll
welcome
let
to
you.
the talk
I'll let you
show.
edit.
Hi,
Oh wait, wait,
Kari.
wait, wait. Oh, I'm talking over you.
No,
So I
no,
feel
it's
like we
okay.
should stop so that you can like make your official announcement. Okay, this is me stopping.
You're a pro. Okay. Oh, you don't have to be all nervous. That's all right. That's all right. You know what I have actually? I don't know how I got in this habit. I've got this imaginary stage manager standing right over here, and I give her a different name every time. Sometimes it's Beverly, sometimes it's Vivian. Today, pick a name. Helen. Her name's Helen. Okay, Helen, I know we're going live in a minute. Okay, yeah, settle down. You take this way too seriously, all right? I've done this before. You don't need to, don't look at me like that, God damn it. I know how to start a, okay, in five. Yeah, I don't think it's real bright to start a talk show with a guy holding resentment. So if you want to just, can we talk about it later? I'm sorry. I'm sorry I raised my voice to you, okay? Thank you. Can we just, time is money. Can we, all right. In five, Kari Wahlgren, thank you so much for being on the talk show. How are you doing?
Hello. How am I? I'm good. I'm
Good.
hanging in there. I'm in my basement as we speak.
And this is where you record, right?
Yeah, this is actually yeah, this is my studio space as well, which is odd. It's odd to have a basement in California.
Yeah, California's not a basement kind of state.
It's not. And when I was kind of looking around for a place and I did need a studio space in the house, uh, I got to this place and there was this like, this little door you open and then you go down the steps and it's just this tiny room and it was only big enough to be a kill room or a studio. So I had to pick one.
Well, if it's downstairs, I would guess it's somewhat insulated from the helicopters and the trash trucks and all the other noise
Yes.
of this city.
Yes, it is.
Very good. Let's get right to it. You started, you're from Kansas, right?
I am.
And you started, I saw the picture when you were with the ventriloquist dummy. How old were you? Like 11,
10.
10. So you were playing with voices even as a kid.
Oh yeah, and even before that, I was. I would watch cartoons all the time when I was a little kid and act out all the different voices. And even before I could read, I would memorize the storybooks that my parents would read to me, and so I would like look like I was reading and turning the pages and acting out all of the voices. But it was just because I was remembering what they had been reading to me. So yeah, I was doing the voice thing pretty early on.
Which is, that would make sense. That would add up that you've had this acumen from a young age and this enthusiasm for it. And then you went to college in Kansas
Yes.
and you went the theater route at first, I assume.
I did. I did. I got a theater degree at the University of Kansas, and then I worked professionally in the Kansas City area for a little over a year, and then I was encouraged to kind of move out to LA and see if I could make it there.
Talk about those moments, because that's the crux of the show, are people who make these career decisions. Because Paula Poundstone has a joke. We always ask kids what they want to do for a living, and the reason is because we're still looking for ideas.
I love
Where I
that.
am, me and my 5 careers all at once. So what is that moment like? You're in your early 20s and you're thinking, wow, this is quite a risk. I don't know. And you said, you used something very interesting phrasing. You said, I was encouraged.
Yeah. So Kansas City at that time, I mean, had a really wonderful regional market. I was doing commercials and industrial videos and radio voiceover spots and professional theater. And, it was kind of always my hope to either move to Los Angeles or New York. And at the end of my college run, I had auditioned for NYU Tisch graduate program for acting. And I got to the very last round and it didn't quite make it. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to audition for some things in Kansas City and I'm going to try again in a year. And so I had actually a really nice career going in Kansas City. And, after the year was over and I was looking at the next year, I had a couple more contract offers for professional shows for the next year in Kansas City, and uh, I had tried again to get into NYU's grad program and just missed it. So I was trying to decide, well, do I just stay in Kansas City for another year? And a couple of the folks that I'd worked with on one of the professional shows were like, you look young, you really should move out to LA and do TV and film, and play younger. And we have some contacts that we can connect you with if you move out there. And so I turned down the theater contracts and kind of packed up and moved to LA. And of course, all those contacts fell through. And then I'm like, what have I done? Uh, so yeah, it was a huge leap, and it was a big risk, especially since things had been going really well in Kansas City.
Yeah, but whether we like it or not, everything is opportunity cost. I mean,
Yeah.
even if you're afraid, you're still, the risk you're not taking is a default risk of sorts. I've learned that too.
Yeah.
So you're in LA, all your opportunities vanish, and what are you doing? You renting a small studio somewhere and taking odd jobs, or did you have savings? How did you get by at first?
Oh man, so I'm living in a tiny studio apartment in Van Nuys, which I found out was the porn capital of the world. There was a shooting in the alley behind my place,
Lovely.
and you know, I just didn't realize. I moved out there, and I was just so optimistic, and well, this is in my budget, and this is where I'm gonna live, and it just there were so many crazy things that I just look back on. And the little old lady living next to me one night, she had her light on, and I looked in, and there were just cockroaches crawling all up the wall of her kitchen. I was just like, what am I doing here? And I started getting some auditions, and so I was going out on I got a little agent, and started going out on commercial auditions, and a few theatrical auditions and stuff like that. And I always wanted voiceover to be in the mix. Like, I had done voiceover in Kansas City. I had made a demo before I moved out to LA. So I was always wanting that to be part of my career. But I got to this point sort of early on within the first couple of years where I'm going into these on camera auditions, and there were these beautiful young girls, like really hot, beautiful young girls that just were terrible. Like, I could see them or hear them, and they're like, "Oh, you were wonderful, honey. You were so great." And I'd go in, and I'm not saying that I'm, Meryl Streep, but I did all right. And it was just like, really, like,
You didn't get the effusive praise and the ass kissing that they gave the others.
no, I really didn't. So I was working all sorts of survival jobs. I did retail. I worked the desk at production and post-production places. I cleaned toilets in a dance studio.
Oh,
So, I mean, I've done a lot of survival jobs. And the last one, knock on wood, that I worked at the desk at a kids karate school. And so it's weird, when people say, "Hey, I want to be an actor," and stuff like that. And I'm sure you know this too. Like, there's all sorts of things that you have to do on the side just to support this dream
yeah,
that you're going towards.
yeah, and
What's the
it
worst
sucked.
one that you've ever had, Joe? I got to know. What's the
The
worst job?
the worst job I ever had, I don't know how to narrow it down.
Top 5.
I
Bottom
worked
5.
I temped for a movie producer, a famous one. I don't want to say their name. And the movie producers have their first assistant. The second assistant is the one who answers the phone and is perpetually trying to schedule lunch for the producer. That was me for 3 weeks. The first one is the right hand person who picks up everything about the business and also insulates them from all bad news. So whenever there was a call for the producer, the first assistant was like, "Who is it?" They were all, the first assistant, I am convinced, had borderline personality disorder because
Oh.
she was nice to me 1 second, and I mean, like that, she would rip my head off. And I'm going, this is incredibly dysfunctional. And she was pregnant with her own child, and the boss would smoke around her. And she didn't say anything. I'm going, this is an incredibly dysfunctional environment. Let me out. That was
Oof.
just fun. I could do an entire hour about crappy jobs. I was a little league umpire once. There's a blow your brains out kind of job. Anyway, I don't want to get into that.
Oh my gosh. I feel like this needs to be a whole show.
Oh, that week I could go on. And I'm now in a new space where I'm trying to let go of the past and let go of resentments, which is why I'm so incredibly happy these days.
I I
Happier.
feel like there might be just like a whipped cream dollop of sarcasm on the top of that.
Oh, maybe. Maybe. It's been a journey. I don't, like we were saying earlier, I'm not glad the pandemic happened. It was horrible, but it forced you to clean out your attic, and I've
Yeah,
gone through a lot. I mean, I'm in a way better place than I was a year ago, for sure.
which is pretty amazing because I don't think there are a lot of people that can't say that. So you must have really kind of done some thinking and kind of,
Well, yeah, it's about finding it's about your mechanisms. It's about your priorities. I'm sitting here going, okay, Why am I miserably unhappy? Why am I 1,000 years old and still not further along in life? Because everyone's
Mm,
been kissing my ass my whole life, telling me how amazing I am. Why am I having panic attacks for no reason? And that's when, okay, it's Joe, do something. Get in therapy, cut back on the booze, cut back on the sugar, go out and walk every day, meditate more. And I just kind of threw everything at the wall. And I'm, like I said, I'm way better now. And I've gone through a lot of crap trying to, like, imagine, this is gross. Imagine having diarrhea for 30 years and not going. That's what I had.
right. You're right. That's
I hope you're not eating. I'm really sorry.
you
That was
know,
a terrible
if
metaphor.
I was, I'm not now.
Oh, I'm here to help. Anyway, so
But for the record, you are great. And
oh, that's sweet of you to say.
I mean,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, but you're just gonna have to take that.
That's quite all right. And everyone who calls me great apologizes. So you said it right. And it takes one
There
to
we
know
go.
one. So, but more about you. So you've gotten through the jobs and the crappy jobs, and then at what was the moment where you said, this is the last survival job I need? What voice or acting gig did you get that got you out of the crappy apartment and got you out of the day jobs, and you're going, okay, now this is what I do for a living?
Um, well, I was working at the kids' karate school at the desk, and I started by working there multiple days a week. And then when I would book a voiceover job, I would get somebody to cover my shift and not work that shift or that whole day. And it got to the point where I was booking more and more voiceover jobs. So I was doing less and less shifts at the karate school, but I was too afraid to cut the tie. And so it got to the point where I was working pretty much 7 days a week and just exhausted and just, wouldn't give up the 1 or 2 days a week that I was working at the karate school. And my boss, who was a friend of mine at the time, said, "Listen, if you don't quit, I'm going to fire you." And so I quit.
And they meant that, like, I'm a fan of your work. This is
Yeah,
dharma. Go do that.
they meant it encouragingly. They were like, "You've really got to go for this. You're booking a lot, and you just need to really go for it." But they actually did say, "If you don't quit, I will fire you."
That's wow.
Yeah.
That's an angel in disguise, because
It was nice. It was that last little push that I needed, and, knock on all kinds of wood, that was the last, survival job that I had.
I think the universe provides when you have moments like that. I think if you're in the right headspace, which you obviously were at that moment, because you're chasing the things you wanted to do.
Yeah,
Yeah, the people around you are going to be like that way, and
yeah.
that's how these things happen. So here you are, now you're a professional actor, kick ass, and are you doing more? Is it all voice work, or are you still doing theatrical stuff?
It was pretty much all voice work. I mean, I was doing a tiny bit of stage, but LA's not necessarily known for their stage scene per se. Um, so and yeah, it was interesting because um fast forward years later when I didn't really care anymore about the on camera side of things, then it was just like, for a lark, I think I'll revisit on camera. And then I actually started booking a few more on camera things. So that it's just weird. It's
It
that
is weird,
whole, when you don't want it, it kind of comes to you, and when you do, it tends to be bafflingly
right? And
elusive.
it's I think it's the ego side of us that tries to control that, going, but I'm doing everything right, and then it's not coming to you, and then as soon as you give up, the other person lets go of the rope too, and you go, oh, here you go, and wait,
Isn't it
what?
interesting? Yeah. And it's maddening, and I keep trying over the years to, like, remind myself of that lesson, but it's so hard because I'm a hang on to the rope girl. Like,
Yep,
I like to be
yep. Oh,
in control.
I'll go you one better. I didn't quit my day job until I had a lot in the bank, and I actually didn't have a lot of gigs going on. I just said, okay, you have money in the bank. You're better at stand up than you used to be. You can't do both anymore. Quit the day job,
Nice.
and I did. It was almost 2 years ago. I'm just like, I can't do this anymore.
Congratulations.
Plus, it
That's
was, you know what? I'll
a
tell you
big
something
deal.
else. it is a big deal. It's huge. That's
Yeah,
why it took me years after I wanted to before I finally did it. But I didn't like who I was anymore. I was becoming pretty miserable, and I had to consciously keep my mouth shut at work. I could tell my attitude was in the toilet. I'm going, Joe, you're going to say the wrong thing. You're going to get called into HR. You're going to get sued. Just head down, get your decap, and say, I'm doing great, George. Thanks, and just keep walking. I don't know
yeah.
why I picked on George. I like George. George was a good guy at work. I don't know why. George, if you're watching, nothing personal. I don't know. Ad lib, yes, and
George is like, screw that guy.
George is like, I thought we were friends. But anyway, good on you for having those insights. Now, when you're doing these voice jobs at first, was there a did you have a little bit of imposter syndrome? Were there moments where you thought, oh, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm glad I'm here. I'll take the gig, but I've got to bluff my way through this because I'm next to this legend and that person has been doing it 20 years and I'll just follow direction and I hope I'm doing this right. Or were you in the zone right from the start?
Um, oh my gosh, that imposter syndrome, I don't think it ever completely 100% goes away. Uh, so that kind of makes me laugh because it's a constant, and especially if you take risks, like anytime you take a risk or you get into a new situation, I think artists are a lot of times sort of sensitive people, and so I think, yeah, for at least for me, the imposter syndrome is something that's always, it's something that I have to work against. But it was interesting because my first series that I booked, it was Super Robot Monkey Team Hyperforce Go for Disney, which is kind of cool because it was ahead of its time. It was a U.S. show, but it was very anime style, and now that's much much more popular. But so it was a little bit ahead of its time. It's on Disney Plus again, which is kind of cool if you guys feel like checking it out. um, but I walked in the first day for the recording session, and Patrick Stewart's sitting in the lobby of the studio. And then, Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob, is in the cast. Clancy Brown is in the cast. Kevin Michael Richardson, Greg Sipes, if you guys don't know them, they're huge heavy hitters in the voiceover world. And then Corey Feldman is in the cast. So it's Mark Hamill's in the cast. So it was just me walking into my first series job, and all of these, I was just really trying not to pee my pants the whole time.
But but there's no way to practice for that moment. I mean,
There's really not.
you have to just do those things. That is the practice. So I
Yeah.
don't think I presume you survived.
I did. I did. I ended up getting a second job. But it was amazing because I really just tried to listen and learn as much as I could from all those people that were in the room, because they are, legends. And it was just like being thrown into a master class every week.
That's again, the universe provides.
Yeah.
So fantastic. And I want to get to the mechanics of what you do on a day-to-day basis. Like when you during the before times, before the pandemic, I had the talk show Live Audience, and our friend Max Cook was a guest.
Ah,
Yeah.
I love
That was,
Max.
yeah, Max is adorable. And he's the voice, for people that don't know, he's the voice of Chester Cheetah. Cheetos has these commercials where a cheetah wearing Wayfarers says 3 words, and that's the get. He says one sentence. He's a cool customer. And I was asking Max, how do you make choices as far as the voice for this guy when he has so little to say? He's got very few words. And Max would say, I channel it, in that he sounds like Regis Philbin on steroids. He's just like, I
Oh my
channel it.
God, that totally sounds like Max.
Yeah. And I'm trying to extract something a little more because analytical Joe wants to know the details and he's not forthcoming. God bless him. But my point is that I'm guessing for all the artistry and all the instinct, there are certain conscious choices you have to make when you are determining the voice of an actor. And I'm just wondering what is the step by step when you're auditioning and when you get the gig and you're actually in the studio rehearsing? How do you figure out what that voice is?
Well, you make a really good distinction there, because you said when you're auditioning and when you get the gig, because they are two very separate things. When you're auditioning, you for me, I just take clues from whatever material I'm given. So sometimes you'll get a picture of the character, sometimes you'll get a description of the character, sometimes you don't get anything. And if you don't get anything, my kind of one of my pieces of advice is to, first of all, imagine the finished product. Like if you're auditioning for a cartoon and they've given you just like 6 lines of the character with absolutely no context, which drives me crazy, then if you read what's happening in the context of it, imagine, okay, is this the point in the cartoon where the character has uh, found the baby squirrel and now needs to take it home and hide it from their parents? Or is this the part in the story where the kid has to take the baby squirrel back into the forest and leave it with the mother and tearfully let it go forever? You know, there's two different attitudes of what would be happening in the cartoon, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you just make a choice. You just make the strongest choice that you can, even if it's wrong. Because if you get a call back, they're going to give you more information. And I've had that happen where, I don't know what's going on. So I make a really tough choice that, gosh, it's really good to see you. I'd love to spend some more time with you if we could, really sexy and stuff. They call me back and they're like, "We loved your voice. You're talking to your brother
That
that you haven't seen for years." So, oh, I'm not trying to seduce him.
would have
It's
been nice if they'd shared that up front.
right, but sometimes they don't. So that's why I say make the strongest choice that you can, even if you don't have all the information, because they know you don't have all the information. Um, when you get to the callback and then when you get to booking the job, um, vaguely remember what you did for the original audition, but do not get tied to it, because I cannot count the number of times that I've walked into a callback and they're like, "Oh, so listen, we really loved what you did in your original audition, but we want to make her about 10 years younger with a British accent." As I'm walking into the room to do the callback. So basically, I've just been told, "We liked it, but we don't want you to do anything that you did in the first audition that got you here." And that can also happen your first day on the job. So you get into the session and they're like, "Yeah, we've been kind of thinking of playing with an accent for her." Or, "Oh, yeah, we liked what you did in the audition, but we really want her to be a lot more emo uh and stuff like this." So if you get so locked in your head of, "This is what booked me the job, this is what booked me the job," you got to let that go, because once you get into the studio and have booked the job, then your job is to be malleable and flexible so that you can create that character with the team.
And so you're creating it with the team. Now, by the team, is it it's the show creator, I'm sure, is in that
Yep.
conversation.
Yep.
Now, this would be the pilot episode.
Sometimes it's just the pilot episode, and then there are other shows that immediately have gotten picked up for 10 episodes or something like that, or, you know.
Now, is there's also a voice director in the room,
Mhm.
correct?
Usually,
Now,
most
is
of the
vo
time.
now the voice director is not the same as the writer or the creator, is that right?
Um, Once in a while, you'll have a show creator that also directs the session. Um, that's that's a hit and miss thing for me. I'd much rather have somebody who is a voice director, just because they tend to be able to communicate with the actors more effectively.
See,
So,
that's where I'm going with this, because I'm wondering how a voice director knows the intention of the show, and how do you reconcile that if they give you a note that you instinctively don't quite gel with? Is there ever a push-pull as far as that goes?
um, well, the director and the show creator are usually working very closely together, or the director and the writers and the show runner are all working together to kind of get on the same page about kind of what they're looking for and everything. And um, especially with the first session or two with the new show, sometimes it's kind of a figuring it out, which is another reason that I would say to anybody out there that wants to do voiceover and stuff like that, just kind of relax as much as you can into the process of it and resist the urge to think that it's all about you and your performance, because there are 100 things going on. They're, they take the finger off the talk back button and you just see a bunch of people talking to each other. They could be ordering lunch. They could be talking about rewriting one line. They could be talking about, oh, you know what? That particular word did not get cleared by S&P or whatever. So there's a lot going on, especially at the beginning of a show. Um, and so when the voice director is kind of talking with me and the show creator is also sitting right next to the director, sometimes, especially in those first couple of sessions, it's figuring out how everybody communicates. Because like the show creator may say something like, you know, I want it bigger. I just want it bigger. Um, so then the voice director would say, okay, so do you mean louder? Or no, well, no, 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 not louder, but just like, like bigger. So angrier? Yeah, angrier. So then I know to maybe not make it hugely louder, but just like a lot angrier. So yeah, it's kind of figuring out everybody's language as well.
Interesting. Yeah, and I imagine it is kind of it sounds convoluted. That whole story, I'm thinking to myself, if I'm in the booth and I see a bunch of people talking right after I recorded something, I don't know about you. I'm sure this has happened to you from time to time. My first thought is they hate me and they're calling security to have me escorted from the building.
Who was our second choice? Who was our
Who's our third choice? Joe wasn't even our second choice. He was our ninth choice. Is there anyone left on the list, Bob? That's
man? No, I feel you. Like I really do. And I guess I guess the only thing that I can say from having been around for a long 100 years is that it's usually not about you, Joe.
yeah,
It's
yeah. There's a lot more going on. I've
yeah.
learned. I imagine some roles are harder to nail down than others. How hard can it get? I mean, do they keep rewriting it? Does the network or the Nickelodeon come back and say, yeah, it's no longer in a laundromat. We're putting it in outer space. Or they goofy notes like that where it just flips the cards and everything. Have you had moments or days or weeks where you're going, are we ever going to get this right?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's I remember one character being very, very difficult because they were trying to find this. It had been a character that was originally done in a movie by a celebrity, and they felt that the celebrity's performance was a little boring. So they wanted to push the comedy and they wanted to push some other layers of this character's personality when they were doing the TV show, and I got hired on, but they wanted to make it true to the character and still to kind of sound like the celebrity. So that's always tricky for me, at least, is you know honoring a voice match, which can sometimes lead to a certain kind of performance, and if they don't actually want that kind of performance, to still find that
Yeah.
sweet spot.
Now you got to thread too many needles, and
Yeah,
it's
it's a
you
lot.
gotta
That can be
balance
hard.
all of that. But you managed to pull it off.
I did. I
Good
did.
for you. Now when you're working on a series, let's say you're going, you record a session on a day, and then the next day you're working on a different show, and then on day three it's back to the series you're working on. Do you have trouble jumping in and out of characters? Do you have to kind of mentally remind yourself what show you're working on?
Oh man, audio engineers are angels from heaven. Uh, Anybody out there that wants to do voiceover, one of the hugest things I can say is be really kind to your engineers, because they are going to save your butt, make you sound good, or save incriminating things that you say in between takes and make you sound really, really awful on the internet.
Oh no, has that happened?
Um, yeah, I mean, I've had some guys record some things that taken out of context sounded so terrible, and so thank goodness they they got along with me, because it was just like, oh, that's awful. But but yeah, usually the audio engineers will save voice samples of what you did, because you can actually have multiple sessions in a day. So I honestly cannot remember from day to day sometimes what I did for a character a few days
Wow.
before.
Wow. So you'll walk in 2 days later going, "Wait, what did I do?"
Yeah, especially if we tried a lot of different things, like, even if it's a small part and it turns out that that part reoccurs, recurs in another episode, we may have tried 4 or 5 different voices, and they're like, "Yeah, that 4th one, I think yeah, we're gonna keep the 4th one." 3 days later, I cannot remember what the 4th voice of the 5 different things that we tried was. So, I I'm I have to rely on the engineers to, save me voice reference.
Yeah, I would think that sounds the way you described it. It sounds like standard operating procedure. I would think any producer would be savvy enough to say, "Look, can you have the sample? Remember we went with number 4? We're going with the 4th one, right? Can you have
Yep.
that ready again so we can have some consistency through the episodes?" Now, um, when it comes to getting work, I mean, you've reached a tremendous station in life here because, my God, you were a Jeopardy question for crying out loud. That's how you know you've arrived.
That was pretty amazing. That
That
was
yeah, that's pretty amazing. I do you d when you get work, do you just have jobs fall out of the sky? Do you have to audition for every single thing you get? How does that happen?
um, I mean, we're constantly auditioning. I mean, I think that's one of the things about the voiceover world that sort of keeps you humble is that you never stop auditioning, no matter how successful you get.
Really?
Um, Now, you may get to a point in your career where you're fortunate enough that if something last minute comes up and the director has to cast something very quickly, they might be like, "Oh, Kari could knock this out very quickly. Let's just see if she can do it." So, there will be things that come up that I don't audition for necessarily, but still the vast majority of the time I'm auditioning.
That's amazing to me.
Yeah.
I didn't I You're shattering a misconception that I've had. I was under the
Uh-oh.
impression that when you reach a certain level, people like you and, Tara Strong and Rob Paulson and Carlos Alazraki and all these names that we see on all the things, I thought you all just were in a club and you had the right of first refusal on everything that came into town. And if you all said no, then it opened up to all the other voice actors. Because it seems like I see the same names over and over again on things. And I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, I thought, oh yeah, well, they're in a club. They're obviously the best in town and they're going to be in demand no matter what.
Oh, well, thank you for that, by the
That's what
way.
I thought. Because
Um
I've seen your IMDb page. I had to read it on a recliner with a snifter of brandy for hours.
That's the nicest.
You've got a massive IMDb page.
Oh gosh, that's I I feel very lucky. I feel very lucky. But unfortunately to shatter your dream, we do still have to audition. I mean, we're lucky enough that sometimes we get cast in things. You know, maybe we'll audition for a lead in something and uh they go with a celebrity, but they're like, "You know what? She'd be great for this side character." So, sometimes when you audition, you get a different part than the one that you audition for, or but yeah, you never stop. I mean, Maurice LaMarche, who I think is just wonderful, he's got 2 Emmy awards at this point for voice acting, and he still has to audition because we were commiserating about it at one point. He's like, "Just man, you just wish at some point you could just be like, just hire me."
I tell you, that is one nice thing about stand up. You rarely have to audition. You get to
Interesting.
People know you. Now, if you want to be a regular at a club, you've got to audition. If you want to be a regular at the Comedy Store, you have to audition 38 times or something because it's, kind of screwy over there. But,
Wow.
as far as get gig to gig, the more you know people, the more you just get emails and texts like, "Hey, I got a thing." And yeah, now you still have to hustle. You have to ask for gigs. Unless you're a hot chick, then gigs come to you. But everyone else has to ask. You've got to email, "How did you get that?" You've got to introduce yourself to the booker. And it's like, "Here's a video of me doing a thing." But you don't have to drive anywhere and audition. It's just like, "Oh yeah, you're funny." It's like, "Oh yeah, we're doing a Latino heavy show. You know any Latino comics?" I mean, it's a gay comedy show. It's this show. And then
Wow.
a lot of it is kinds of people. There's no
Yeah.
there's no like straight white guy comedy shows. That's called comedy. And they're constantly there. I mean, yeah, and I'm not knocking it. There should be diversity in lineups, absolutely. But there's no demand for white guys because white guys are the default that have kind of run comedy forever. So I gotta earn it on charm and talent.
Dang it.
Yeah, right.
Curse that charm and talent.
Is this even America anymore? Come on. So now you've done a lot of voice acting. It's obviously a very satisfying career, but like a lot of creatives that you and I know, we're doing other things.
Hmm.
We keep, and I don't know, you've got this mechanism. Obviously, I do too. I can't stay in one lane. I'm constantly bouncing around. And then one day I get an email saying you've started a metal band.
Uh, well, it it's sort of a metal band, sort of. There was a hair band in the late '80s, early '90s, SlaughtHER, Fly to the Angels, Up All Night, and I could never listen to that music when I was a kid because it was the forbidden music, and I wasn't allowed to watch MTV and everything.
What?
So, oh yeah, yeah, I was I was small town girl, and
Have your folks lightened up since then?
well, a little bit.
Okay.
And I've gotten old, you know,
Okay.
so now it's just like I can do what I want. But no. So back in 2016, I was talking to a friend of mine and it kind of came out that I secretly do love hair bands. And so she said, "Oh my gosh, we're going to this Hair Nation festival in Irvine, California. It's gonna be like 20 bands. Do you want to come?" So I went to the show and SlaughtHER was one of the bands and I just fell in love with them. And so I went and saw them again in concert. And on the way home, I was just thinking, oh my gosh, wouldn't it just be awesome to do just like an all female thing and call it SlaughtHER? And so I was laughing, and then I was like, that's actually a really fun idea. So I got this band together and realized that I couldn't sing like Mark Slaughter. Like I could do a little wow, but I can't sustain that for a whole show. And so I started just kind of reimagining the songs. Like, how do I sing this around the house? Well, I actually sing this one in kind of a jazz style. So we did a jazz version of a SlaughtHER song. And then I'm like, well, I sing this one in kind of more of a pop style. So we did that one in a pop style. So we basically created this show of all SlaughtHER songs in all different genres of music. And then that turned into recording an album, which is coming out pretty soon. And we just dropped the first single and music video for it a
Which
couple of days
crushed,
ago.
and we will have that in the show notes.
Woo!
So there's a
Yeah,
full album coming.
there's actually, I will say it here first, there are two full albums coming because I could not stop at one. Your look, Joe, is just
Two albums.
well, I did so many songs that some of my friends were like, this is just too much for one album. You should just split this into two albums. So there's a lot of SlaughtHER coming, you guys.
Whoa. That but again, it's nice that I mean, I can relate. I get it that you've got that mechanism inside of you that says I need to create something else and you just do it. Because I think a lot of people want to create something and they well, how do I produce an album? How do I assemble musicians? How do I do this? And you're sort of because I've seen the posts on Facebook too. Hey, does anybody know the bass player for so and so and whatever? And then you just hunt it down and you manage to get you managed to get ego out of the way enough to say, I need help with this. Does anybody know
Absolutely.
somebody?
Absolutely. And a big thing for me with this project was not about necessarily showcasing myself, but to learn how to do something interesting with the songs. And so I guess through the process, like I've really, really enjoyed learning how to produce. And so the most exciting thing about this for me has been to find the right singer for each song and the right person to play bass on something and who does this style really well because I know I do it okay but this person is awesome. So I'm just really excited because it's going to showcase a lot of really talented people, and that's fun for me. That's fun to kind of create something and take the ego out of like, oh, it's got to be about me, me, me. No, like what's going to make this project the best it can be.
And it also sounds like you're relying heavily on the expertise of others because I know your background is not in bands. I'm
It's not
assuming
in bands.
this is the first time you've ever assembled a band, or it was in
It is.
2016.
It is. So it's been a very steep learning curve and like lots and lots of hours of sitting with people and saying, okay, so This is the sound that I want. How do you create this electronically? Okay, this is what I want here. You know, can you teach me how to do this? So, you know, huge learning curve on it. But that's you can't do it unless you do it, you know?
Right,
So,
exactly. And at certain points, did you? Because I mean, for me, I'm sitting here thinking, I don't know enough about a band to assemble a band. I mean, I know what I like, but is it any good? I mean, were there moments where you're going, wait, I like that sound, but would it work in this song, or is it totally wrong? Am I? Did you have other musicians say, good idea, but why? I don't think that would work here. I mean, how did you
oh
reconcile?
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it this whole SlaughtHER thing, you know, the live shows, the album, it's been completely trial and error, and it's been completely learning and flying by the seat of my pants the entire time. So there's always been for each live show a song that just didn't work out. And in a lot of cases, there were times where I just didn't know enough to communicate what I wanted, and so I had to learn a lot more, and then down the line, I would know the questions to ask. Okay, what I'm trying to say here is that I want this panned in the production, and I want this stacked so that we can get this kind of sound, or, you know, this, you know, kind of thing. And there was one song where I had an instrumentation, a specific instrumentation in my mind, and I re-recorded it 3 times with different musicians, and it just didn't work. Like, it just did not work. And so I had to go back to the drawing board and re-envision a different instrumentation for that particular track. So it's all a learning process,
Yeah, believe me, I've face planted plenty of times trying different things. But you're right. This is how you learn. Did
right?
you did you now? Why Slaughter? Why their music? Was it something about the lyrics? Was it something about the sound?
You know, people have asked me that so many times, and the truth of it is I don't know. I don't know why it was Slaughter and not Guns N' Roses, or why it was Slaughter and not, you know, Poison, or something like that. There was just something about that first performance that I was going through a really rough time in my life when I went to that very first show, and it was this first little spark of joy and like real happiness that I had had in a while. And when I started kind of listening to their music after the concert in my car and stuff like that, I just found myself feeling better and feeling motivated to do things again, you know, exercising and just feeling creative again. And I just, I questioned it a lot in the beginning, like, why? What is this? And then after a certain point, I'm like, you know what? Stop. What's that Bob Dylan quote? I hope I'm not wrong, but inspiration is hard to come by. You got to take it where you can get it.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, where are my teeth? But I like that one better. Yeah,
Very sage words there. And I could be wrong. I thought that was a Bob Dylan quote, but
maybe it was. Of course, when he
yeah.
said it was probably inspirations are to come to find it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Bobby.
I had another question. Yes, and I really should write these down. No, but you did say something that spawned something else, and now I can't think of it. So should we edit this part out, or should we just sit in awkward silence for a moment while the old guy tries to?
I opt for awkward silence.
Okay, let's see how long this lasts. I remember you.
Oh,
There was a story I saw. I think you posted it on social media about how you were at a Slaughter show and someone from Slaughter recognized you.
yes. Yes. I mean, this is part of the story that is just so crazy about this entire thing, and it's another one of the things that just sort of keeps me going, Okay, I'm just going to keep rolling with this." So we did our first live show in LA, and somebody told Mark Slaughter about it. And so they sent their booking agent to just check it out and be like, okay, is this a joke? Is this a real thing? Is this happening? So the booking agent showed up to the first live show, ended up staying for the whole thing, filming it and sending them clips. So they were like, "Oh my God, this is awesome." And, you know, started following me on social media, and I had been following them on social media, of course. And um, so, so fast forward a number of months after the first show, I took myself to a concert in El Cajon outside of San Diego. And I got myself a really good seat. You know, it was kind of near the closer to the front, in the middle, and stuff like that. And Mark Slaughter actually saw me in the crowd and had one of his security guys bring me backstage so I could watch the rest of the show backstage and then chat with them in the green room afterwards. And it was just crazy. It's just like, what? How is this? It's like,
Yeah,
yeah, I recognize you.
that's weird that he would recognize you because the lighting when you're on stage and you're looking at
You
the audience
think?
and you see a zillion people there, it's probably not the easiest way to recognize a person.
I
So
have big teeth. I think that's what it is. I have very big teeth, and I smile a lot during those shows. So maybe it was just like ding.
maybe that was it. That, who
Maybe.
knows? But I mean, I like that story because it's another example of the universe providing. So
Yeah. It was just so, and it was so wonderful and so encouraging. And you know, after we did that first show, I thought, well, you know, that's done. You know, I don't know if we'll ever do it again, but we did a show, and then to have that experience happen at their concert, it was kind of just that little extra boost of, I think we need to do this again. And so we
yeah,
kept doing it.
far out. Now, as far as other creative endeavors go, after all the years you've done voice work on cartoons, have you ever thought to yourself, I'd like to create my own cartoon? Or forgive me, have you already created one?
You know, I did create a Bible and some artwork for a cartoon series, and it was a little before Netflix started. So, you know, I can't remember how many years ago would that be? 10 more?
The streaming was like 10 years ago when that
Yeah.
started to take off.
So it was a little bit before Netflix started, and it was a really raunchy adult cartoon. And at that time, there was only Adult Swim on Cartoon Network and Comedy Central. And so I took it to a couple of people that I knew from cartoons that I had been working on, and I was like, "Hey, I've got this idea." And they're like, "Whoa. Yeah, that's going to be a really hard sell. I mean, that's really raunchy, and there's only two places that you've got that might remotely be able to pick it up." So I kind of gave up on it, and now, you know, there's been this explosion of streaming services and adult cartoons that are raunchy that I thought, man, I was just ahead of my time.
Can you still pitch it?
You know, I probably could. I probably could. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
You
I never say never.
you know,
We'll
you
see.
know, you know. I know. I'm sensing resistance.
I have ideas. I have ideas, and um, the tricky thing is that I'm sort of a really all or nothing kind of, throw all my passion into something. And right now with the album and stuff like that, that's kind of been where I put most of that time and energy. So I don't know if I've quite had the mental focus to really see it through to the finish line.
That's understandable. I could see how that would occupy you,
Yeah.
and you still have voice work during the day. So
Right.
yeah, I could see that would wipe you out. I will put all of this in the show notes where they can find you and find your work and find the album and find the song and so forth and so forth. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for telling me all the ins and outs of the voice world. I mean, I've learned a lot today. I did things I did
Good.
not know.
Good. Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome. No, it's
For
fun. I'm glad to. I'm always trying to learn new stuff about people's jobs. People have had. There's some interesting jobs out there.
Oh yeah, I'm sure some very interesting
Oh
jobs.
yeah, yeah. I've met a few of these folks going, how did you get into that? So, and you told me the whole story, so I appreciate it. Kari, thank you so much. Talk to you soon. I will let you know when
Thank
this is up.
you.
Do you want to say and we're clear, or do I say it? And we're clear. Yeah, this is really passive aggressive, Helen. You're supposed to say and we're clear. So we know, because I we'll talk about it later. There you have it. Wasn't that fantastic? You know, you chase your dreams and you just keep going And then you also listen when the universe says no. I mean, she tried to get into NYU School of Dramatic Arts twice and got turned down. You know, she could have just gone, oh, well, I guess the universe hates me. But she went, no, that road dead ends. I guess I'll take this road. And then look at that. You see what happens? So rejection isn't personal. Rejection is the universe trying to save you from yourself. That's what's going on. And if that's the case, I've been saved a lot of times. I want to thank Nikki Hayworth for the opening animation and Juan Camacho for the drawing of me that makes me look like Richard Nixon as a carpet salesman, and Aaron Kenny for that opening music, Gaiety in the Golden Age. I found it on the internet. I don't know what I'm going to do now. Create more stuff. I. That's it. Why are you watching me? Go create something.